welcome back to Oasis Nuevas Forces. Today I have an interview with Mark and Jayne Brewster. Mark and Jayne Brewster are going to explain a little bit about their ministry that they have with Life Impact. So stick around. I think you'll like it. Tell me a little bit about Life Impact Ministries.
Life Impact, the best way I use to describe it is that it's a network of homes throughout the world, and the primary purpose is to minister to those who are in ministry, whether it is missionaries, pastors, other Christian workers that are needing just some care and some encouragement or whatever. And they most of the Oases that are throughout the world are for the purpose of bringing these people in and coaching them, encouraging them, or offering whatever ministry they need.
Okay.
We like to say it's a place to go and a person to talk to.
Yeah.
What does the word Oasis mean to you?
Well, it comes back to what Jayne mentioned, where an oasis within the framework of our ministry and within the framework of Life Impact, it's a place to go and a person or some people to talk to, people who are in ministry that needs some refreshment, just like an oasis in a desert is a place of life and refreshment in a dry, barren area, you know.
Tell me a little bit about your Oasis.
Okay. You want to take this one?
Sure. Well, in our Oasis here in Lewiston, we at this point in time we don't have overnight guests, but we have group of pastors that come for lunch and once a month in our Oasis area, as well as there's a weekly book club that meets down there, and then we also host pastor couples, that just come here just to encourage them to either one-on-one with them or other couples as well. And so that's what we do here in Lewiston. And then we have Shepherd's Rest Oasis at a Cedar Springs Christian Retreat Center in Sumas, Washington. And there's a place for when we minister to pastor couples, so there's a place for the pastor couple to stay. And we're in a different facility, building, different home. And so we have them come and they stay in their place. We have some material for them. They go through that material. They're there for about 4 days total, and a large part of that time they're going through the material in the notebook and just resting and spending time together and just kind of having some of their own time. And then in the evenings from about 4 o'clock on, we meet with them and have a meal together and share together and just hear their stories and just encourage them. Yeah. As the Lord would lead.
And I would just add that our Oasis ministry here in Lewiston, I mean, it's sort of like we distinguish between our Oasis and our ministry here with Life Impact, because a lot of the ministry that we do is not in our home. I go, there's a town about an hour from here that I go to once a month to meet with a group of pastors there for a lunch. Another town about an hour and a half away that I go to that I meet once a month with a group of pastors there. Tomorrow I'm going to be heading to another town about an hour from here, the other direction, and meet with a group there. And so, and then, we often meet one-on-one with pastors, or as a couple, we meet with other couples, sometimes at a restaurant, a coffee shop, or different places. So, it's not location that is as critical in our ministry here as far as being in our home, but our ministry extends beyond our home.
What do you guys think that your specialty or your gifting is? I would say at your Oasis, but as you mentioned before, it's
Right.
not necessarily
Yeah.
specific to location.
Well, see, I pastored a church for 30 years here in Lewiston before I went with Life Impact, and so I would say that probably our specialty. I mean, we like to say it this way: the two things that we do, the overall big picture of what we do here in Lewiston, is that we like to gather pastors together because it's our realization, because of having been in that role, that nobody understands pastors better than other pastors.
Yeah.
And we like to gather them together, and that's a big part of what we do. And then the second thing is to personally care for the pastors. That can be in the area of giving coaching, spiritual direction, advice, and sometimes it's just our friendship with them. And so that's kind of our specialty. And I don't know if you want to add
I think
something.
when we lead the refresh retreats or the Oasis ministry at Cedar Springs, we just like to provide a place that's going to be comfortable for them, and that it's going to be as special as we can make it to be, for them to be able to rest and feel like they're alone and not bothered by all kinds of noise and confusion or whatever happening around them. And then just to spend some time with them, just to listen, to encourage, just to care for them, and just to affirm them. That's what we just like to do, is in those kinds of things.
Now, there's a certain term that's been tossed around a lot now. It's member care. I could look up the dictionary definition of member care, but how do you guys see that term?
Well, I think the way I like to define that, because that's still a term that we don't even understand, quite honestly.
Yeah, exactly.
We realize it is a common term now being thrown around, which is great. So the way we say it, and this just comes out of what we do, is that we like to pastor the pastors, or we like to minister to those who are in ministry. That's how we say it.
So how did you guys first get interested? I know you kind of mentioned a little bit before, you were a pastor, but how did you guys specifically get interested in member care?
I'll let Jayne go first. There's a long answer to that, so we'll try to.
Right. Well, in some ways, the long answer is when Mark was pastoring at the church, he was often other pastors in the valley he just reached out to them, and they would respond back, and he built a caring ministry to them. But one of the ways I think that it became a real important to us is that when we were going through our ministry to pastors, there were about 3 or 4 different other pastor couples over the 30 years that really gave member care to us. And we realized that, we just think, Lord, I don't know how we could have survived pastoring in the church if it hadn't have been for these people that reached out to us. And so when we were done with our ministry of shepherding the church at here in Lewiston, we just said, hey, this is what we would like to do. We would like to do the same thing that people had done to us in terms of reaching out to pastors and encouraging them, because it made a huge difference in our lives.
Yeah, I would add to that just a couple things. One is that, even in keeping with what Jayne just shared, there was one day when, and this was early in my ministry, and some things had been going on, and I was just in the pit of despair. And I went over to the church office on my day off, and I planned to write up my letter of resignation.
Wow.
But I decided before I was going to do that I was going to call two of these men who at that time were that I had connections with, that were caring for me, and both of them pastors that knew me, and older men that I respected, and I appreciated their wisdom and experience. And because of that, I realized that that's not what the Lord had for me. And looking back, it would have been one of the biggest mistakes I would have ever made in the ministry. And the other factor is that there was a couple later on in our ministry that we got to know. They don't live here in this town, but they were pastoring us. They were people that we would call. And the other thing that they had available is they had a condo in a resort town about 2 hours from here. And they made it was just for pastors to come and stay. And so we often would go down there, and on the way back, we would talk about how, we even thought, maybe we should save up money and buy a place that we could make. I mean, we just wanted something like this, because it gets back to this idea that we know from our experience that ministry is hard, it's discouraging, it's depleting, and there are just those times in life as someone who is in ministry where you need either a safe place to go and or a safe person to talk to, and that person has to be somebody that you love and loves you, and appreciates and understands what life is like in ministry.
Yeah, I love that you both said basically that it was people that had touched you guys in that way, and that you wouldn't have made it through to a fulfilling career as a pastor, or like a longer career as a pastor if you hadn't have had those people in your life. I love that. I love to hear that. I'm going to throw you guys a curveball here.
Okay.
I just thought of this. Why do you guys think it is that so few people will ask for help when they need it, that are pastoring, that are being missionaries?
Well, one of the things that comes to my mind is that somehow we feel like that if God is really who He is, who He says He is, and if He lives in me, then I should be fine. I should be, living the victorious Christian life, or I should be tracking well, because that's kind of the impression that we kind of give, that we place upon ourselves, and that other people place upon ourselves, that that we have to have it all together. We have to have it more together than everybody else, and because of that, it's hard to kind of sort of take the mask off, or to let down, and to really it has to get really bad before we realize that, hey, we're as bad off as we are, and having people who are real and vulnerable around you helps to realize that, what, I can be real and vulnerable, even being, in the ministry or whatever.
Well, and I would add to that, I don't know how this works with missionaries, because our world is with primarily pastors, obviously. But what happens is that if pastors, first of all, pastors have a hard time, really being vulnerable with people in their congregation.
Yes.
Because, and it's understandable why, because whether we like it or not, we have a different view of pastors. People in our church have a different view of the pastor than any other person in church. And so,
and missionaries are in the same place too.
Yeah. But what we have learned is that that so what will happen is that a pastor will isolate himself, and in time that's gonna spell trouble.
Sure.
And but if a pastor is already in relationship with other pastors, and as they grow in getting to know each other, they find out that, what, most of us are like the rest of us.
Sure.
And so we have this Thursday morning book club for pastors, and it's a small group, 4 to 7 pastors that show up, and we read through a book and we kind of talk about it. But most of the time, we're just talking about our stuff. And these pastors they're just being very real. They're being really honest with each other, because they understand each other. They understand, oh yeah, so somebody left the church and they were all upset when they left, and how much that hurts, and maybe it was a key person in the church, and and all the pastors identify with that. They know what that's like. And so, but if there's not that relationship to share that pain, and there's not safety in that relationship, if there's a sense of I'm competing against these other pastors and churches, or this comparison thing, then that's not going to happen. So that's why why it's so important to us, in part why it's important to us to gather pastors together.
What do you guys think are some common misconceptions about member care?
Well, one of them that I've thought about is that people don't like to think that they need something, that they're needy, that they need counseling, that they need help, that they need member care or whatever. So I think sometimes some of the roadblocks to member care is just coming to the place where, I need something in my life right now, and that's okay. And I can say, hey, I need some member care, I need some help. And I think sometimes it can be, intimidating or threatening or whatever, because you feel like you're gonna be kind of forced to open up and spill all your guts out or something. When really in reality you're just gonna be loved and cared for. But yeah.
And I would add to that often, and again, I'm putting this into the pastoral world, is that often people in our churches, they can't understand why a pastor maybe is so exhausted or burned out, or on the edge, or something like that, because they, in so many people. And this doesn't say that they don't love their pastor, but they just don't understand what ministry does to a person's soul. And sometimes, unfortunately, a pastor doesn't understand what ministry does to the soul. So I think that one of the misconceptions about member care also that comes in is that, I'm in ministry. For the pastor himself, or the person in ministry, the ministry leader, I'm in ministry. I'm serving God. So, I shouldn't be, what's wrong with me that I'm tired, or that I'm frustrated, or that I'm, angry, or, that there's got to be something wrong. But at the same time, what do I do about it? One of the things, partly I'm aware of this because I burned out back in I didn't quite burn out. I was on the verge of it. And that's when I took my first sabbatical. And but what I realized is that, and I'm sure this is true for missionaries, that this exhaustion that takes place, this depletion that takes place, it's slow and it's subtle. You don't realize that you're in trouble until you're in trouble. I always tell pastors, don't take a sabbatical when you have to take a sabbatical. That's not a good time.
Sure.
Try to measure that out a little bit, so that you're not to the point where you're, in a corner huddled up in a fetal position, and you have to resign because you just don't have what it takes anymore.
What would you like people to know about this type of ministry?
Well, the first thing that I think personally is how necessary and vital it is. And I think that should be true for pastors, missionaries, and so on like that, because that comes back to this idea of recognizing their own need. And I think also the people that they serve. And sometimes I don't know exactly how this is with mission organizations, but I know with sometimes with denominations, they're not sensitive. Denominational leaders sometimes are not always sensitive because they're trying to get their leaders to get out there and produce, and it can be they feel the pressure of that. The pastor will feel the pressure of that, and again, it wouldn't surprise me if that kind of thing can happen to missionaries as well.
How can people contact you guys?
On the website, they can get a hold of, just get our email. That's the easiest way.
So it's www.lifeimpact.care, and then the second our Oasis, and then you can scroll down through it and find you guys' link, and both your email addresses are there.
Yes. I can't remember exactly how it appears on the website, but they can contact us through the website. Yeah, there is an email address, at least one of us, if not both of us.
Okay.
It might be just the Oasis website or email address.
I'll put the link in the description box for this video.
Okay. Sure, that'd be great.
Is there anything else you guys want to add? Anything that came to your mind while we were talking, or anything that you feel is important? You just want to put it out there?
I guess the only thing that I might add is that that our approach to what we do is highly relational. And because we feel that is important, that is still the most important thing, because we believe that the life of Jesus flows primarily through relationships, our relationship with him, but our relationships with one another. And so even with these refresh retreats, we provide materials and everything like that, but it's not a program. It's not a curriculum or anything like that. It's more like a smorgasbord, and they can enjoy as much as they want. And when we meet with them, if they don't want to talk about what they got from the materials or whatever, in fact, usually they don't. They just want to share some things that are going on in their own lives and in ministry. But by the time we get done, at the end of these refresh retreats, we're friends. And that's what's important to us. And that's the same way we try to develop our ministry here in our area with the various pastors that we minister to. So relationships are extremely, extremely important in all of this. And that's what we like about Life Impact, is that we don't have to, we're not in a position, we're not in a pastor position or where we're making decisions for, where some, an organization or a church or whatever is going. I mean, we do have to lead, make decisions, but we're able to really get into the relational aspect of ministry, because that's where life comes.
Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you know of anyone else who you think could benefit from watching this video, please share it with them. If you like the content on this channel, please subscribe. Now, we upload a new video every Saturday. See you on the next one.